Welcome to Innovate or Evaporate, the podcast where we explore the relentless pace of change and the innovators who drive it. Every episode, we dive deep into the world of cutting-edge ideas, breakthrough technologies, and the fearless pioneers who are pushing the boundaries of what's possible. Today's guest is Governor Eric Holcomb, a leader whose vision transformed the state into a hub of innovation and growth during his time as the 51st governor of Indiana. From championing groundbreaking policies to driving record-setting economic investments, Governor Holcomb has proven that bold thinking and collaboration can redefine what's possible for a state and its people. As he says, collaboration is a powerful force for good, especially when everyone has skin in the game. In this episode, we'll take a deep dive into his journey, leadership lessons, and the legacy of innovation he's leaving behind. If you're ready to transform your thinking and ensure you don't get left behind, stay tuned, because it's Innovate or Evaporate.
This is Christopher Day, your host. Governor Holcomb, welcome to Innovate or Evaporate.
Good to be with you, and not as one of those antiques that's been left behind.
So I'm so excited to have you on the podcast today. And this is as your second term as governor of Indiana is coming to a close here over the next, roughly 30 days.
27
days.
Under 700 hours if you're keeping score.
That's absolutely amazing. I love it. I've had the honor to get to know you over the last several years. Actually, maybe the first time we did some legislation 7 years ago.
Absolutely. At your place, by the way. Thank you for hosting that big day. It's made a big difference what came out of that policy change. Yeah,
that's right. It was absolutely amazing. What I love is about Indiana is the open-mindedness of people, and how we truly like to work across the aisle, right, with each other, and how our governmental institutions interact with our private sector. It's absolutely special, but that doesn't happen on just by chance, right? So let's take a little trip down memory lane, and let's talk about how you grew up. So you grew up here in Indianapolis. You went to Pike High School. Let's talk a little bit about the household, your parents, the things you learned growing up.
Well, I was pretty fortunate, quite frankly. I always say the West Side's the best side, and that's my Pike High School roots and Guyan Creek Middle School. And before that, I went to Pittsboro Elementary School, so even further west. But two loving parents probably, can make all the difference in the world. Very encouraging of my older competitive brother, although I'm taller than he is. He's, got to everything.
His name's Brian, right?
His name's Brian, and he always got to things first. And I got the.
Is he taller than you?
No, I'm taller than he is, by about a half an inch. But he always got things first, or I got the hand-me-downs. But it was a loving, household. And I think maybe most importantly, my parents, who probably wonder where I came from, although I know they know the answer where I came from, but no one's in government or politics or campaigns in my family, not just immediate family, but even going back some generations. So that just to me is an example of how they supported whatever we wanted to do. I always remember hearing busy boys are better boys. Like you're not going to, I don't care if you play violin or basketball or get into literature or all the above. You're going to do something. You're not going to sit around and be bored and get in trouble. So find it, and we'll support it, whatever sport it was or hobby or pursuit academically. School obviously was very fortunate to end up going to Hanover College. It had been talked about. My parents both went to college, so it was, I won't say expected, but was just kind of, you got to create your own, and good things can happen when you apply yourself. So was able to go to Hanover College, and that place had a tremendous positive impact on my life, my friends, the faculty that I kept in contact and still do to this very day. It's a small world, and the generations over the course of time start to blend together. And age becomes so much less of a factor the older you get. And they're still very involved in Hanover College faculty, very involved in my daily duties, and or friends that attended there before me, some of which have been part of this administration. One just left the office about 15 minutes ago. So it just shows you Walt Disney was right. It is a small world after all, and gets even smaller if you intend it to be so.
So what were some of those things in your household growing up before you get to Hanover?
Yeah.
What are a few things that pop out? It was kind of expected to go to college to figure that out. But and were you into sports, arts, both? But like, what were some of the things your parents instilled in you? Any sayings or any of those types of things?
Busy boys are better boys. Yeah, I mean, I'm haunted by a lot of the sayings that, especially my mother, I had my mother as a third grade teacher. So imagine going to English class and
sit up straight,
sit in front of Mrs. Holcomb. But it was also very good. But the expectations, and there's no BS in your teacher ever, especially when it's your mother. She kind of knows what your potential is. And then my father was worked for Allison and Rolls-Royce, so here locally, engineer. Mother was a teacher. So they knew whether I was applying myself or not, and they very much supported as not just me, but even my friends, very involved in sports, just kind of growing up, whether it was in the street or the backyard or the driveway or wherever. We kind of traveled, me and my buddies traveled together like a pack of dogs, and those kind of 6 guys are still the closest friends I have in this world, and we'll be together before the end of this term. In January, just like we were in the beginning, and a lot of kind of highlights, Indy 500 races or NBA All-Star Game. We all get together all the time, but, developed a lot of good, not just neighborhood, but elementary school, middle school, high school relationships growing up, and largely revolved around sports. Just hanging out together and growing up, learning about life. We built a basketball full court at the residence. Before I got elected, as I was on the campaign trail, I would go shoot and make a basket in every of the 92 counties. And it really was kind of harkening back or reminiscent of growing up and not being even competitive, but just shooting baskets with your buddy. Whether it was in the snow and your fingers are splitting because, you've been out there and it's cold and your feet are soggy, but you're still interested in the conversation, and you're growing up together. You're living life, and you're learning from each other just by talking things out. And so that's really why during the campaign I said, I'll go meet you wherever you are, whether it's in a barn shooting hoops or on the side of the barn or in the biggest gym in America or at the firehouse. You name it, I'll show up at the city park. And so I would meet with mayors or street department folks and at the city park and shoot hoops and just talk.
Yep, that's awesome.
And it was, that has a way of breaking down barriers if you go into some inner city or out to the farm and just shooting some hoop, and it's about as quintessential Hoosier as you can get too.
Like sharing experiences together, right? It develops incredible deep relationships.
And you don't have to prepare.
Yeah.
You can just be you.
Yeah.
You don't have to, try to go 10 for 10 either. People are going to miss shots in life. Right. And you just learn from it.
Who was it that said, was it Wayne Gretzky? We miss 100% of the shots we don't take. Yeah.
Yeah.
So true.
And you learn to talk about the future. Wayne Gretzky also talked about, skating to where the puck was going.
Yep.
And we've tried to do that here as a state as well.
So, all right, so you go to Hanover, and your major was U.S. history, right?
Yep.
And when you went into the Navy.
Yep. Got out of. Actually, that's an interesting kind of twist in life. Went to Hanover, and this was just before Desert Shield storm happened. It was being talked about. Everybody knew something was going to happen, and I went and saw a fraternity brother of mine who wasn't there when I was there. He was older and still now a very, very good friend, but he had just gotten back. He actually worked for the NSA, and he had just gotten back from Riyadh of all places. And so he was back visiting his family, and he had been stationed in Moscow. So he had lived this life that I had kind of heard about from afar. Didn't really know him. My fraternity big brother knew him really well. And so my big brother set this meeting up, and
this is you're out of college at this point?
I'm out of college,
by
living
a
at
couple
home.
Years or
no, just months. And ended up setting up a meeting with Tim, and in the time that he was back home visiting family, and I got to talking about how I had this easy life and never really done anything for anybody on a scale that I'm a student of history. I know what people have done for me and for everybody else and the sacrifices they have made, like these people here,
yep.
and that are on these walls in the governor's office. And, I want to do something more consequential than just going out and getting a job. And he basically said very bluntly, like, shut up and step up. And
that's amazing.
There are ways you just got to quit talking about it. And like, you're going to talk yourself like around it or delay it. And so I signed up and joined the Navy and told my parents after the fact. And I had some other options. I was talking to someone out in California about moving out there, had a place to live, but that was interrupted by a conversation with Tim, and thankfully so. And so I was able to do 6 years in the Navy, and I was living overseas for the last 3 of the 6.
And was that in Portugal?
That was in Lisbon, outside of Lisbon, Oeiras, Portugal, at a Sint-Iberland, little underground NATO war headquarters, primarily focused on the Iberian Peninsula, obviously. And then it was, okay, you're basically at the point to where you start to think about career or coming back.
Yep.
And I decided to come back, and I moved into southern Indiana, or I moved to southern Indiana into the home my mother was raised in. My grandmother had just passed away. And so it was a very easy kind of transition it wasn't hostile buying my mom and my brother out of their portion of that estate. And and I loved history, and we had always spent, holidays down with my grandparents in Knox County, Indiana, full of history everywhere you look. And I just, thought I'll figure it out. I remember talking to my parents, like, what are you going to do now? And I said, I'll figure it out. So the joke in my family is, I always say, I'll figure it out.
So when you were wrapping up your time in the Navy, you hadn't yet made up your mind that you wanted to have a life in politics yet. You came back to Indiana.
Furthest thing from it.
Really? That's wild.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I moved into this home that we go to for holidays, where my mother was raised, and right down the street was a basketball court. And there for a while, I wasn't in any rush. I had saved enough, and I would go down and just dribble and shoot by myself.
And think. And
kind of took my time, didn't rush. And by the way, Lisbon was a little bit more, I don't want to say chaotic, because they've got different speeds or different gears you can shift into. But when you move into a smaller community, Vincennes, Indiana, which is an incredible community, but I just was blown away. I could go to the grocery, get groceries, pay my utility bills, pay my phone bill, I could just do everything in about 20 minutes.
Yep.
Like, it was all close. And I wasn't used to that. Like, I was used to these things, going around town and doing one-offs. And so I loved it. I loved the history. Ended up getting met. Someone said, you talk about the same constitutional issues that the congressman down here talks about. So my career started as a driver for a congressman, and at a very, I'll say below minimum wage levels. And it was almost like a patriotic duty just to try to assist. Didn't know it would ever last. And one thing led to another, and ended up managing one of his successful campaigns and got to know a lot of mayors around kind of southwestern Indiana and kind of south central Indiana. And I just really enjoyed that part of it, and more so than anything else. And that led me to just getting to know folks. And then along came a guy that was being talked about, Mitch Daniels, to run for governor. And I got into that long line, that parade of people that was trying to encourage him to run.
And you became an advisor to Governor Daniels and also Senator Coates, I believe, right? Yep. What I love about this story is the sacrifice. So you follow your passion, right? Become a driver for a congressman, following your passion, taking some tough times from a pay standpoint to build networks, build relationships, do what you love, and then great things seem to happen. So talk about that transition then into Governor Daniels' administration, and was Senator Coates before or after that? After that.
Yeah, so I worked for Mitch for 10 years in one way or another, very kind of as a volunteer associated with kind of the draft movement to try to convince him to run back, went out to D.C., went to his office. He's the budget director for the free world, worked for President Bush at that time.
Yep.
And added my name and thoughts to the list of people who were encouraging him. And I remember he said, "Who sent you?" And I said, I come on my own. Don't represent anyone else. And then it got
this is in D.C.?
This is in D.C.,
right.
In his office, yeah. And it left him with some things to review that were just my thoughts. And the very next day he called me before 8 a.m., and I had put some things down in writing and on paper. And he, to his credit, and I remember him taking what I sent him and he kind of threw it on this sea of paperwork on his desk. And I thought, will he ever read that? Like, was that for naught? And he did. And he wanted to talk about that. And that's what kind of set into motion me meeting someone who you'll remember very closely, Bill Osterly.
Yep.
So Mitch had reached out. He called me, and he also reached out to Bill. And then Bill and I met at the Double Inn Diner in Brazil, Indiana, over a breaded tenderloin and coconut cream pie. And that meeting lasted a while. And I didn't want a job. Kept saying I don't want a job. I just want him to come home and run for governor. And that would be the best Christmas present of all. Ultimately, he took his time and decided to do that, and sold the house in Vincennes and moved up here because it became. I was traveling around the whole state at the time, stopping at a lot of truck stops, along the way, and buying new music to listen to. There's a lot of windshield time.
And you're a connoisseur of tenderloins.
And I love tenderloins. It maybe started then, quite frankly.
Do you have a ranking? Do you have like an AP?
I've got.
So it would be an EH, like an Eric Holcomb, top 25.
I could easily do it. In fact, I had tenderloins last night, plural, and the day before for dinner. So back-to-back breaded tenderloin days. Maybe I'll have some tonight too. I don't know.
That's awesome.
But that 10 years got him through both terms, and then did some political things on the outside for him as well, and then met someone I just had revered my whole life, Senator Dan Coates. Got hired to work for him as his chief of staff based in Indiana. So he had a chief of staff in Washington, D.C. that had a very different kind of job description, great guy. And mine was here. And did that for a number of years. And then through another twist and turn and twist back, ended up former Vice President Pence, former governor of Indiana, asked me to be his lieutenant governor. His lieutenant governor had sought her dream job at the time, and she's been there ever since, the president of Ivy Tech. So there was a vacancy. He asked me to join. I did. He was running for re-election. Before then, candidate Donald Trump asked him to be his running mate. That created a vacancy. We'd never run statewide before, decided to throw our hat in the ring. So one thing kind of led to another, but it wasn't ever, I'm going to go work for the congressman. It was there was no grand plan or timeline. I wasn't the guy that, in the fourth grade said, I want to be governor one day. It was a lot to do with timing and a lot to do with when opportunity presents itself, you make the decision and to or not to.
And you poke your nose through that door, and if you like what's on the other side, you go for it. So I want to move into your administration here in a moment. Before we do that, as you think about those experiences with Governor Daniels, with Senator Coates, are there a few things that stick out in your mind? And we always like to talk about, like, innovation is not just investors. It's not just entrepreneurs. It's policymakers, right? It's philanthropic leaders, education leaders. It's all of these folks that have a hand in the innovation pie. And one thing in Indiana, we're ranked as one of the highest regulatory environments in the country, right? What are some of the things that you learned around how to think about policy making, leading disparate stakeholders throughout those years with Governor Daniels and Senator Coates that kind of formed as you came into the governorship, how you might approach things?
A lot. Another long list. One, collaboration is a powerful force for good, especially if you're motivated to do good. You have to bring people around. I always say you're either at the table or you're on the menu. You decide.
We have the largest duck farm in Indiana too.
There you go.
Talking
Maple Leaf
on the menu.
And so that collaboration, which often then leads into, are you aligned or not? And we've come a long way. It certainly didn't start with me, but we've almost built it into the business model to align with other stakeholders, not just have them at the table, but to say, we're all going to put skin in the game, not just going to be government. If you're relying on government to solve everything, you're probably going to be doing this in 10 years, in 20 years. You're not really innovating.
Right.
But if you can get the philanthropic community, if you can get the corporate sector, if you can get the government sector, state, local, federal, if you can get academia to all sit around the table and say, here's the skin I'm putting in the game. Good money follows good money. Then good things tend to happen, but you got to have a plan. That's something I really learned from Governor Daniels is every single year he was, in his words, aiming higher. And so it was never good enough, which was the absolute right way to approach everything, even if you're number one. Yep. Even if you got a great regulatory environment, somebody
maybe
else
more important if you're number one.
It is, because everyone else is learning from your trials and tribulations and your shortcomings and your successes, and they get to skip a lot of steps to catch up.
It's true.
And so I would always say we've got to always have a plan that's always being updated, and it's not enough to cast a vision. You can't be rhetorical about this job. You have to, have a vision. That attracts a lot of people who are drawn to the cause, to implement a plan, and then measure, hold yourself accountable. The voters will too, but hold yourself accountable, which is oftentimes a lot more harsh than I think the electorate can be if you're truly trying to meet your potential.
So did you write the book Leading the Revolution?
Yeah.
That was before?
That was when Mitch was leaving, 2012, I think.
That was in 2012. So a lot of these experiences led for you
I shared that I wrote it with Mitch right in this office. His desk was over there. And I came in and let him know that I wrote a book, and he was signing papers. I'll never forget it. And he looked up and he said, when did you have time to write a book? Like, were you taking time off? And I said, like midnight to 2 a.m. That's my time. And that's when I did it, by the way. And he said, well, I'll take a look at it. And I said, no, I'm not asking permission. Like, it's done.
Right.
Like, it's going out. You're just going to read about it. So I'll give you a copy so you don't learn it, from the street.
That's awesome.
But he's read it, I think, a couple times, actually, over the years. And it's just a bunch of lessons on his courage and his execution of the duties.
All right, so let's talk about the last 8 years. $126 billion announced
committed capital
investments. That's over 2,000 projects.
Yep.
So let's just hit a few. I know there's too many to hit all the highlights. Let's hit a few of the highlights that you're the most proud of, that you think will help transform Indiana.
Yeah. I think where we've leaned into new spaces, that being into research, not just resting on our laurels saying we're the number one manufacturing state in America per capita. It's what comes before the manufacturing, back to the innovation side of the house or ledger, and the creation side, taking an idea to scale, and then production, and then distribution. And so to have a hydrogen hub awarded, to have a biotech hub awarded, to have a microelectronics hub awarded, to be able to build out those ecosystems that have to do with the future of mobility, whether it's battery companies or semiconductors or packaging for semiconductors, those not just leanings, but those investments that will determine if our 5 auto OEMs that we currently have here, and AM General, and RV production, and in the marine sector, boats that we manufacture, the future of mobility in general is dependent on those places where the R and D occur. And whether that's in life sciences or plant, animal, human health, life sciences, that's all now starting to occur here. Manufacturing isotopes, not just transmissions. We still do transmissions. We do fuselages. We do jet engines. We do, but we're increasingly becoming known as the core of America, doing the research that's necessary, the innovation that's necessary, that has to do with both our economic security, but quite frankly, our national security, and how they go hand in glove. So we are truly, I always say, this is a new Indiana. Like there's New Mexico, New York, and we've got New Castle and New Albany and New Haven and New Carlisle, but there's a new Indiana, and that bodes well for our future.
What did you not get to that you wish you had?
A lot more progress. We scratched at it, but I would say we're always going to be in need of more skilled. It's too simple to say smarter, and I put myself in this category. A more skilled workforce for the jobs of now and 10 years from now. Because we always try to think of where are we going to be in 2030 or 2040. And that usually takes even more courage to try to strategically plan for how you get there tactically, because most politicians want to enjoy the fruits of their success or labor now.
Right now.
Like right now. Yeah. So everybody else is. But when you're making investments that are 6, 10, 20 years down the road, and so, our literacy rates have to improve, our folks skilled to go right into a career coming out of high school have to improve, our college rate has to improve, our health and wellness rankings across the board need to improve. And we've taken some giant steps. We've done some things that we've just never done before, unprecedented funding and policy adjustments on those fronts, but it's going to take some time to realize the actual improvement. And then we're going to need to do some things between now and 2030, 2040 that I'm not even thinking of.
Yep.
And so addressing the unknown will take a lot. We'll take a good team. We'll take the right motivation. And that's my successor's successor. You know what I mean? So I'm not saying all the pressure is just on whoever follows me.
Right.
It's the ongoing. It's taken us this long. 20 years ago, Mitch Daniels came in here. We were delaying payments to local schools and to local governments. We had to right the ship from a fiscal perspective before we could ever dream about making quality of place investments into rural Indiana or suburbia or even urban Indiana.
He tells a story about, I think at the toll road, the cost per car was roughly 15 cents or something. We were charging a nickel or 8 cents or something or other. Yeah. It was like, well, let's change the price.
Yeah, our cost was more than what the revenue that you brought in was.
Yeah.
And so, you're going to go tilt sooner or later.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what we were doing. We were just racking up debt. And by the way, so he leases the toll road for $3.85 billion.
Yep.
There's never been a deal of that size since. So he, carpe diem, struck while the iron was hot and the market was open, got a fantastic deal, and then now fast forward to me, 2 governors later, renegotiated that toll road lease, threw another $1 billion in cash off, took $600 million of it and put it on I-69 and moved up the completion of I-69 3 years. Think about, that was 2027 when that was supposed to be completed. And because we had cash, we shaved it back to 2024. Not so it would be done before it was because we had cash.
Massive impact.
Think about how much money we saved between now and 2027 in just interest or inflation.
Massive impact.
And it doesn't happen unless you're willing to think outside, the proverbial government box.
So to summarize, before we get into our rapid fire questions, congratulations. So here's just a few things, and tell me if I forgot anything big. By the way, I didn't realize the story you just told. That's amazing. So 3 federal tech hub designations that you mentioned earlier. 4 of the Magnificent 7 have announced major projects here in Indiana. $126 billion in capital investments announced, over 2,000 projects. You have the split of Purdue and IU, so now I have 2 R1 research universities right here in Indianapolis. It should be so powerful. You have the emergence of we have defense tech corridor, med tech corridor, hard tech corridor, the quantum corridor. Did I miss a corridor?
Medical device.
Yeah,
med tech. I mean, you're driving at it.
Yep. What other big? I probably missed a half a dozen other big ones, probably even more than that. Anything?
Well, the auto industry is very, and our aviation and aerospace industry, plastics actually as well. A lot of innovation going on in that front. When you can take watermelon rinds and make, 100% biodegradable toothpaste caps, like you're onto something. I mean, that's good for the world. So all that's happening right here, whether it be in a, family factory or field, or one of our, most iconic corporate headquarters like Eli Lilly or Cummins.
It's amazing.
Or Zimmer Biomet.
Well, congratulations! It's been one heck of a run, and so now we're going to enter the final sprint here.
Sweet.
4 quick questions. These can be 1-word or 3-word answers. Or we call our rapid fire round. So, what is one widely accepted idea that you think needs to be challenged?
I would say people need to be challenged, especially people who are rhetorical. So
I love that.
I may be speaking to my crowd, but if someone tells you they're fighting for something, ask them, show me some of the wins. I want to see what you fought for. And
back to your friend right out of college. I love it.
Exactly right.
If you could solve one problem in the world with innovation, what would it be?
Health. And we're getting there, but when you stop and think about people's lives through no fault of their own, it could be genetic, but that we're losing, I would love to make that discovery.
What's the most unconventional piece of advice you've ever received or given?
Unconventional piece of advice. Don't play by the perceived rules.
Ooh, I like that. That was provocative. I like it. What is the most important thing to do to keep up with a world that is changing faster than ever?
Be bold, not rhetorically. Have a plan that's bold so that people are chasing you, and you can be the hunter and the farmer at the same time. I think that's what we're doing. I think we're cultivating these ecosystems, but we're not content farming the yield that we have. We're out hunting and bringing it back too, and that's a powerful 1-2 punch.
I love it. Governor Holcomb, congratulations. 2 highly successful terms. You have placed Indiana in an incredible position to be very successful on the global stage in the future. And it's been a pleasure chatting with you today.
It's nothing about me. It's all about we. It's a heck of a team. Derive a lot of pride by being around all of them.
Well, thank you again, and we'll see you all soon next time on Innovate or Evaporate.
This episode was brought to you by Rally, the Global Cross-Sector Innovation Conference. Learn more at rallyinnovation.com.